Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Net Zero Nuclear booth at COP28 at Expo City in Dubai. Now, I'm really excited about this panel because I have very good news for you. I come from Chicago, Illinois. Chicago, Illinois is a city of millions of people with harsh swings in climate, but no matter what the season is, it's powered by nuclear energy. Now, this is kind of interesting. Nobody in Chicago knows that Chicago is powered by nuclear energy. They hear about high electricity bills elsewhere and they think, that's interesting. And then they keep paying low electricity bills. They hear about a climate crisis and they think, might be good to do something about that. But they don't hear much about it in Chicago because Chicago, Illinois is powered by 80% nuclear electricity on average throughout the year. Sometimes it's 100% more nuclear, sometimes it's down near 60% nuclear. The average is 80%. Whatever you may know or think about nuclear energy, I need you to know this when we're talking about clean cities. Nuclear energy puts out almost zero carbon emissions. And how have we done this? Well, Chicago constructed a bunch of nuclear plants a long time ago when almost nobody in the world had heard of climate change. There were no COPs. COP 1, 2, 3 were barely in people's minds. It was far away when Chicago already provided cheap, clean energy. Now, electricity is just one part of what makes cities clean, of course, and I am absolutely thrilled to offer a fascinating panel of young energy experts from around the world who are going to share with you aspects of clean cities that they think are most interesting and are connected to nuclear energy. So to start, I'm going to want you to hear just a little bit more about Chicago's energy situation and what it means going forward from Michael McLean of Chicago, Illinois. After that, we're going to hear from Abubakar Sadiq Aliyu of Nigeria. Then we're going to hear from Törmänen of Finland. After that, Julia Galosz, Poland, then Emeric Massaut of Belgium, and then finally, Andrea Long of Australia. So we've got a lot of panelists here, but they've got some spicy things to tell you about cities. We're going to get straight into it. Mike McLean, tell us a little bit about your experience with energy in Chicago.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Michael McLean, based in Chicago. I'm an advocate for abundant housing and housing density. I'm a part of a group there called Urban Environmentalists Illinois. I'm also an organizer with Chicago Bike Grid Now. It's a group of activists where we're fighting for a network of safe streets for cyclists across the city. And I stumbled into nuclear around the 2020s, around the time that Chicago was trying to shut down 2 nuclear plants. Crazy. How could that happen?
Wait. You're saying Chicago, 80% nuclear electricity, cheap electricity bills, almost no carbon emissions, was trying to shut down 2. How many of that? How many nuclear plants does Chicago have?
We have at the peak, we had 13.9 gigawatts of generating capacity, almost more than Ontario.
So at the peak, that sounds like we lost some. At the peak, Chicago had enough nuclear electricity for around 10 million people. What about now?
So the 2 plants were saved. More recently, we just undid a nuclear ban. We're waiting on the governor to sign a bill where he is going to legalize nuclear energy. So now we're going to be hopefully building reactors again.
So can you tell me a little bit? You say you're an advocate for bike lanes. And I've certainly met many people. I met some gentlemen who had traveled for 3 months across the world to COP on bicycles with giant solar panels on them. So you and them would have something in common with biking maybe. How on earth is there a connection between biking and nuclear energy when we're talking about clean cities?
So the thing that I love about cities is the density. When you have a high concentration of people, you can have a very low carbon footprint. For transportation, you have active mobility through transit, through walking, through biking. And then on the energy side, you have more energy efficient buildings, but the key thing that nuclear offers for dense cities is reliable power in the winter. You talked about our weather. In Chicago, December, January, it can get very cold, very dark. Last year, we set a record for 30 days in a row where we did not have a cloud out of the sky. it was cloudy for 30 days in a row. So when it's cold and dark, you need reliable power to decarbonize heating. Heating and transportation are the two biggest sources of carbon emissions in Chicago, and nuclear can do both.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We'll come back to you maybe when we come through the topics again, and you may have some questions. Abubakar, welcome. Could you introduce yourself, please?
My name is Abubakar Sadiq Ali from Nigeria. I am working with the Center for Renewable Energy and Sustainability Transitions, where we have 3 thematic areas, biofuels, nuclear, and solar. I'm also a nuclear energy advocate, work with the African young generation in nuclear.
So I know this about Nigeria, though I haven't been yet. Among others, you told me about it. Nigeria is the most famous country in the world for generators. Can you tell me a little bit about generators in Nigeria?
Thank you for that question. Before answering your question, I want to chip into Michael's. Normally, when I had people talking about shutting down nuclear reactors, it usually get me like overwhelmed. Like, what are these guys thinking? They have a means of production of peaceful, clean energy in a peaceful manner, in the case of nuclear energy, and then they want to shut them down. Well, I don't know their reasons, but it usually takes me off balance when I hear that. Now, coming back to generators. I think Nigeria is a country with a high dense population. I think the most populous country in Africa, about 250 and counting. Now, our source of energy is usually gas. That takes the largest percentage. Of course, there are other contributors like hydro and a bit of renewables. I think 1% also. We produce about well, first let me start with the installed capacity, which is about 11,000 megawatts.
Wait. So we heard from Michael that Chicago had 13,900 megawatts of nuclear power for one city alone. You're saying that Nigeria, with 250 million people, has what installed capacity?
11,000 megawatts.
11,000 for 250 million.
Yeah.
And Michael, we said 13.9, so 13,900 for about 8 million. So how do you fill the gap beyond the grid?
Exactly. That brings the question of diesel generators. Because you have 250, and with large business and small enterprises, they need an energy to run their businesses. Now, if the government cannot produce enough for them, they will have to definitely look for alternatives. And that's where the question of diesel generators come in. They do renewables, but I think diesel works better for them because it's cheaper, and then it gives them what they need.
So 250 million people, almost no electricity. You just said that for homes and businesses, diesel generators makes up the rest. You must be talking then about tens of millions of diesel generators running sometimes around the clock, right?
Yes. Not really around the clock, because we usually have average of 12 to 7 hours a day. Yeah, and mostly sometimes in the night. So you see, businesses mostly run during the day, so you need to complement that.
Got it. So we have this Clean Cities panel. We hear Nigeria is the most populous country in Africa. It has less installed capacity than Chicago does with nuclear and other power plants around it alone. And the gap is made up with tens of millions of diesel generators. Are diesel generators, can you tell us about the experience of Lagos with millions of diesel generators?
Well, I live in Kano, but then the Lagos experience, I think, is something I can know about because I have a lot of friends there. Lagos is like the hub of industries for Nigeria. Bulk of the industries lies there. And then it has a population of about 20 million. Yeah, 20 million. And I think, like I said, most of the industries are there. So these industries, they either provide for themselves or they complement with the government provided electricity. So it's a kind of a state that is usually, can I say, with a lot of pollution per se, because even the mode of transportation usually is also another problem because it doesn't have a large area like other states like Kano and Abuja. It is a small city, but then since it has these industries and what have you, everybody is populated there for jobs and what have you. So Lagos is a very good city to stay, and then on another side, it's stressful with respect to pollution and then means of transportation too. Recently, I think in collaboration with my colleague, we wrote a proposal for them to venture into nuclear power, and we are going to hopefully make the presentation in January, late January, because currently in Nigeria, the government have agreed to decentralize the grid, meaning states can now produce or generate their electricity by themselves. So we think with that, they can look into the proposal, and we hope it will work for them.
Congratulations, gentlemen. We look forward to reading that. Taya, now, Michael McLean over here claims that Chicago's cold, and you're from Finland, right? Would you like to tell us something about clean cities and nuclear in Finland?
Hi, I'm Törmänen, and I'm from RePlanet, and I was chairing the local organization in Finland for 4 years before embarking onto this project, making us a global network, which we are now. So very grateful. Today, by the way, is the Finnish Independence Day, so I'm very honored and to be here to represent Finland and share the Finnish perspective on this panel. So it was minus 20 degrees centigrade when I left Finland, and I arrived here at plus 30, so my body was in complete shock yesterday. I'm adapting now. So yes, it's very cold in Finland, and we talked about solar. So in Finland, between November and March, we consume 60% of our total yearly demand in heating. And we only get 10% of the total radiation from the sun during those months. And it's also very cloudy in Finland in winter, and climate change will make our winters even more cloudier. So that's projecting that we know that's going to happen, that the winters will become cloudier. So that's obviously a problem. And we just had 2 weeks in Finland now without any wind at all. So right now we're really running on nuclear.
So you're saying that between December and March,
November and March,
and March, that's 60% of your energy demands for heating?
No, it's we use 60% of the total demand for heat during those months. Yeah.
Okay,
in 4 months.
Which makes it obviously one of the largest sources of energy use for any.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
And then you're saying that solar in those same months are about 10% of the sun of the whole year.
Yeah.
During the time when 60% of your needs are cooling, especially at night.
Yeah.
Or heating, especially at night.
Yeah.
So how do those numbers? I can't see that working, but now you're saying that the wind turbines themselves weren't working for the last.
Yeah, so we're still using a lot of burning in heating right now. So we're still using fossil fuels. We're still using biomass, which is a huge problem. We used to import biomass from Russia. Now, for obvious reasons, we don't want to import biomass from Russia. And getting sustainable biomass for the amount that we need, it's really difficult. So, I mean, the utility in the Helsinki city area has said that we cannot get rid of burning in heating unless we get nuclear plants to do that. So we're really now looking into district heating with nuclear.
District heating?
Yeah, so all the cities in Finland have district heating systems.
And what, for those of us in the very hot countries, what is district heating?
Well, it's just in heating one network, so all the homes are connected to this pipeline that you get heat into your homes. From right now, we're burning waste, we're burning biomass, we're burning some of coal and peat, and then outside of these district heating areas, then we were using heat pumps and whatnot. But yeah, it's just like a distributing system for heat, basically. So I'm a biologist. So, excuse me, I don't know all the technical details. I'm looking at this from an environmentalist perspective and how we can decarbonize everything and get rid of emissions. So, I'm definitely not a district heating expert.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, though, you've said something very interesting that I think very few people have talked about. You have these plants which directly provide pipes of steam to heat homes and businesses, right?
Correct.
Those plants are burning biomass?
Yes.
which is, as we know, one of the dirtiest and slightly sketchiest way to get your heat.
Yeah.
But you said that you guys are proposing making nuclear plants, presumably this district heating is in the district.
Yes.
So you're saying the nuclear plants are going to be in the district.
Yes, because we have now big nuclear plants, but we have 5 reactors, but they're outside of these big city areas, so it's not financially viable to get these pipelines to these big cities. And so we, as a Finnish organization, we already published the report in 2017, where we suggested that we would decarbonize cities using nuclear. We were the first ones to organize a global seminar about this topic in Finland in 2017, and that's how we got the discussion started in Finland. And now we're looking into having the first reactor online for district heating by 2030. So we had a governmental research institution doing this researching into like a heating reactor that produces only heat. And now they've started a startup company based on that research project, and we're really hoping, and the current government is really pushing for this as well. So hopefully we'll have clean district heating in 2030.
Taya, you're saying you're going to put, by 2030, nuclear reactors to replace biomass burning in the middle of cities. How are Finns reacting to this?
They're very happy. I mean, the public acceptance for nuclear is record high in Finland, has been for years. We only have 6% of people who are against nuclear in Finland, so we've eradicated the whole opposition, basically. And we've done polls about small reactors within city limits, and most people are fine. Just across party lines, people are saying, yeah, sure. I mean, if it provides heat, then we're fine with it.
So one of the most important words for those of us young people who love cities is YIMBY, an acronym meaning yes in my backyard, as opposed to the much earlier acronym that we heard of many rich countries in the 1970s, NIMBY, not in my backyard, meaning yes, we want this, we want that, maybe we even want nuclear, but not near me. And of course the dark joke of this phrase is if each person says yes but not near me, that means by definition not anywhere. But you're saying, people are saying, yeah, I'm from Helsinki, I'd like a nuclear reactor in my backyard.
Yeah, we had a research reactor in Espoo, which is a big city. I mean, it's part of the metropolitan area in Finland. We had a research reactor there for decades and nobody cared. So we've had that already. And so, yeah, Finns are very open to this. And we have green politicians campaigning on this topic, like saying, yes, bring on the heat reactors. So it's just across the party lines, and there's not a single parliament party left in Finland opposing nuclear. So it's the most popular climate solution in Finland right now.
Well, that's pretty cool, and it actually, for Michael and I, we're from Chicago, the city that kind of invented nuclear reactors, and in the city, so it sounds like Helsinki is going to, like a salmon swimming upstream again, to go home. We're going to move the nuclear back in the neighborhoods, starting with Helsinki. That is exceptionally exciting.
Yes, we really try to beat the Estonians, who have a same thing in mind.
Thank you so much, Taya. Julia, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you live in Poland.
Okay, so my name is Julia, and I am from Poland, as you mentioned. I'm a board member of Water for Climate organization, which is a part of RePlanet, umbrella organization. I'm a biologist, and right now I'm trying to become a lawyer, but there's a long way in front of me. So we will see how it goes. And I've been advocating for nuclear power since, I think, 2018, so something like that.
Okay, and how old are you?
I'm 22.
So we have a 22-year-old biologist who wants to be a lawyer. I want to tell you that in the earlier nuclear world, 22-year-old biologists who were becoming lawyers were not always the friend of nuclear. What's happened?
Actually, nuclear saves environment because we can spare the land, so we can leave the land for the nature. That's the most important part for me. Also, it's clean energy source, so it can tackle the climate change. It can be part of the solution, which is also really important for me because climate change obviously can impact the environment and the biodiversity, of which part we are as humans. So everything connects. I connected the dots, and it turned out that I should advocate for nuclear.
So in a way, this is interesting. This is a clean cities panel, clean cities powered by nuclear. And you're saying that as a biologist, even if you're in a city, you love nature. And by looking at nature, you came to nuclear, which, as Michael alluded to, helps power dense cities. Could you tell us a little bit about the interaction between building human things, habitation, cities, roads, infrastructure, and the need of natural environments?
Okay, so right now in Poland we have huge problem because everybody wants to have a house near the forest, or in the forest and live this really peaceful life. But in terms of nature, for the nature, the best solution would be us living in the cities, us in one place, district heating, also, and leaving the place for the nature. So that's really important because we are fragmenting the areas where animals live.
Why is the fragmentation important?
Because we are not providing natural corridors for them, and they cannot be diverse from this genetical point of view. So it's really hard for them to adapt to the climate change, and also it can lead to extinction of some species.
So you're kind of painting a vision for us that you looked out to nature, found nuclear, and you have this vision of cities, even with nuclear plants, moving into them, as Taya said, and that increases the contiguous areas that species can live in.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm coming more from an energy background, and I know there's a very famous bit of energy infrastructure, several, that are the killers of contiguousness. They are extremely long lines that cut across the landscape. Some of them are okay for nature to move in and around, some are not. They all make a slight break between areas. And I'm thinking of pipelines for one, but the other one, transmission lines. Can you tell us something about the needs of different energy sources for transmission?
In general, for example, in Poland, we right now have to transform our whole transmission line system. Because if we want to invest in renewables and nuclear can be in the place where the coal and power plant was. So nuclear power plant can be in the place where it was. But in terms of renewables, if we want to have them, everywhere, we need to connect them to the grid somehow. And energy lines are also not so good for biodiversity because we also have to cut the forest, for example, in some part. We have to fragment this area of living of the animals. So it's better to have your energy source close to your town and do not have to build these really long energy lines.
Thank you so much, Julia. Emeric, tell us a little bit about where you're from and what you do.
So hi, I'm Emeric Massaut. I'm from Belgium. A little bit about my background. I now work for nearly 10 years for the Belgian Railway. And I'm also a nuclear advocate, co-organizer of Stand Up for Nuclear, and for next year's election in Belgium I'm also a candidate for the federal parliament. So this is a bit about my background. Why is this important? Well, in Belgium, our railway network, for example, we have more than 90% of our railway network which is electrified today. Cities in Belgium are very polluted by transportation, and when you take your car, think transportation, traffic jams, it's usually cars. If you go to around big cities like Brussels and Antwerp, you go on the main highways, half of the lanes will be taken by trucks. So half of the traffic jams, even during rush hour, it's trucks, it's not just cars. Railways can bid an alternative for this with the existing network because it's already electrified. But that electricity needs to come from a source which is reliable, constant, and affordable because, well, usually, why do we have so much trucks? Because it's still financially more attractive at the moment to use trucks than railways in many applications. And one of the reasons is that energy isn't that cheap. Also, around cities, we rely a lot on natural gas, oil, and biomass, wood, for house heating. We live in a rather Nordic country as well, more than 50 degrees north. So in the 3 to 4 months of winter, we heat a lot, and a lot of the pollution in cities comes from heating. An example for this is Brussels actually forbids many days during the winter to use wood burning as a source of energy if it's not your primary source, because even though it looks nice, your house fire, it actually contributes to air pollution. And during heavy pollution days, they actually forbid this. And I believe that there is a legislation which is going to be put in place to forbid also primary heating coming from wood burning in Brussels.
Okay, so you've electrified trains. What were they running on before electrification?
Coal, when you had steam trains, you know, the old steam trains. I mean, Belgium is one of the precursors of the railways. Just after the British, the first railway line opened in 1835. We had a huge network by the late 1800s. And then from the 1900 onwards, we started electrifying. And then there was a push. Even today, we're electrifying nearly the rest of our network because it's better. You can increase the capacity and you reduce pollution and you also reduce maintenance. So you actually reduce the cost of your operation of your railways, and also for our customers. So the train operators, they have less maintenance. So it's good for economics, but it's also good for the climate. It's also good for pollution, as you don't need all the diesel trains. Yeah.
Okay, so
that's
you
what they
say
were
Belgium
running,
has electrified its trains.
Yeah.
If the electricity stays cheap, that can be part of putting more road traffic onto the rails. So surely Belgium has a big supply of clean electricity and a great plan for keeping that supply not just up but raising it. How's the baseload clean electricity system in Belgium? Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah. So in the 1970s, we started building nuclear power. And we ramped up the deployment of nuclear power between the 70s and the 80s. And up to last year, still more than 50% of our electricity was supplied by nuclear power.
So 50% of this electricity that's required to power the railroads. So for anybody here who doesn't know, 50% nuclear electricity is among the very highest fractions of not just nuclear electricity in a country, but clean electricity in the world. That's magnificent. So everyone in Belgium was really happy about this, and the situation is going to continue.
Unfortunately not. In 2003, we had a government which decided that, well, nuclear wasn't the way. We had, I think, 1% of renewable or even less by then. And we're like, we're going to phase out nuclear and renewable is just going to come into place. So we had a law which is called the Nuclear Phase Out Law, which wasn't a transition law, it was literally a phase out, and renewable would naturally come in to supply this. Fast forward 20 years, we're now at the dawn of this phase out, which is due in 2025. So that 50% is due to phase out by the end of 2025, still today. And we have, I think, the last numbers is around 10-15% comes from renewables, and that's with enormous investment backing from government subsidies and so on. And it's still intermittent, so that means sometimes we have quite a lot of renewables, but sometimes they need to be backed up by gas power plants today, and we still have the baseload nuclear. In 2025, we don't have.
No, Emeric, everyone's got different specialties at COP. I'm not, say, a calendar specialist. I don't design or sell calendars, but I just checked today's date. We're at December 6th. 2023. There's a phase-out law that says the 50% of Belgian electricity, the vast majority of your clean electricity and the only electricity that's both clean and stable, that has to be gone by 2025.
At the end of 2025. Exactly. It's a very crazy plan.
And in Belgium, do they have a presence at COP? Have they ever heard of COP or climate change?
I think they did. I heard our Prime Minister today that he was part of this pledge of tripling nuclear. But from my understanding, Belgium hasn't ratified this because within the government there's still some debates about whether nuclear should be part of the mix. So there's today a plan to maybe extend only about 20% of that capacity. We want to extend it beyond 2025, but this is, for a start, not enshrined in a law yet. It has not been fully agreed with the operator yet, and it is so we still hope that it's going to happen in the next year or so.
So Michael, as Chicagoans, we've got this 80% clean electricity. We're sitting pretty. We hear about Belgium at 50%. You and I might think, that's okay. It's okay, it's not Chicago, but it's okay. You have this need for the clean electricity, for clean cities, the way we've heard from each of our speakers. Our biologists have said we need to preserve nature. And you're telling me that Belgium's going from 100% electricity, there's 50% nuclear. They had a phase-out law 20 years ago exactly, while you had 1% renewables and a small, densely packed country in dark Europe, in the cold. And then you said, well, if we get rid of the half that's already what we need for climate change, maybe that 1% might grow a little. It grew a little. You're now 2 years away from sacking 50% of your power supply, specifically the part that's supposed to do
The clean one,
the cheap clean one that runs the trains.
Yes.
The Emeric, as you may have heard, keeps the trains running on time.
Right.
And then, Michael, could you comment on this as a Chicagoan transport expert and 80% nuclear user?
What's the question exactly?
What's the question exactly?
I will be horrified for you. I think that's absolutely horrible. And Emeric, if you need to run trains and you want to electrify Chicago's diesel trains, we will welcome you as a climate policy, as a lack of climate, as a bad industrial, bad climate, bad human, bad air pollution quality refugee working for the railroads in Belgium. We welcome you warmly to Chicago, and we'll set up
To electrify your railways, yeah,
So-
we hope so.
Well, best of luck in your upcoming election. It sounds like there's absolutely extreme chaos that you can
Yes.
help with. And as a railroad man,
I think also in the election, that's why I want to run now, because I want to break what the current status quo of parties have been doing for the last 20 years. In every election, they've reconfirmed that law. It's going to be fine. We're going to invest. We might need to subsidize a couple more gas power plants to fill the gap. But in 2024, this will be the topic of the debate of the upcoming elections. And I want to be part of the debate, and I want to make a change to say we can have progressive parties that want to keep nuclear energy going, the existing plant, the cheap plants that exist, that are safe, that has been operating for 40 to 50 years, depending on which plant you're talking about. And we want to also expand this so that in 2050 we can maybe double or, who knows, triple our capacity in Belgium, so that we can electrify most of our needs, from heating to road transport to industry. And yeah.
thanks
Thanks a lot.
so much, Emeric. Wow.
Thank
I
you.
need a break from that. 2024 elections hinging on nuclear energy. Whew. Okay, we're going to move on to Australia, where I'm sure that's not the case at all. Andrea, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, thanks, Mark. My name's Andrea Leong, and I am a biologist. I'm the president of RePlanet Australia. So, as we've heard, RePlanet is a global network of eco-humanist organisations, which means we think people are good and they deserve to live good lives. And we also think it is really important that we protect the environment. One of those reasons being humans depend on the environment. And it works the other way as well. Humans look after the environment. And yes, so I'm from Sydney, Australia. And Australia is a very urbanised population. 90% of us live in cities.
But Australia's huge.
Australia's
you
very
have
big.
Plenty of room to live in, yeah?
Yeah, well, that contributes to... It's kind of generous to call some of Australia's cities. They're so sprawling. We have reasonably good train networks, suburban rail, metro, subway, whatever it might be called, but they're infrequent, so people aren't huge users of them. So it's a very car-dependent sort of city and very sprawling.
So question for you about this car dependency. We actually haven't talked that much about cars. I know Michael is on this crusade against them and wants bikes to move between cozy nuclear-powered buildings in Chicago. But let's say you had to keep cars. What would you do about it? If you had to keep cars in these sprawling Australian cities, if you couldn't build overnight, how do you meet ambitious climate goals with cars?
Yeah, as much as I think the solution is to have fewer cars on the road, the cars that we do have on the road can't keep burning petrol. So we talk about gasoline. Sorry for my Australian terms. We talk about our electricity, our energy transition a lot in terms of electricity, without talking too much about the fact that we have all our transport left to electrify. So the idea of electrifying everything is kind of taking off in Australia. Australia, it has started its our energy transition by going for a 100% renewable energy target by 2050, and that's all that is available to us because nuclear is banned in Australia, has been for 25 years. So that's why we have to pursue this 100% renewables target. So that's become the target rather than clean energy and decarbonisation. The goal has become 100% renewables. So we can't do that without electrifying our transport, which currently runs on petrol, on fossil fuels.
So tell me something. Australia's really big, right?
Mm-hmm.
Really sunny.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty windy.
In places, yes.
Has a big coastline.
Yep.
A lot of people living near the coastline. High winds offshore.
Yep.
So obviously, I like nuclear. I don't want nuclear banned. I think that's insulting, especially when it's such a huge part of Chicago being the #1 nuclear city in the world. But what would you say to a critic who says Australia has all these features? What on earth do we need to do, wasting our time unbanning nuclear?
I love when Australia innovates. As Australia is a very innovative nation. We are entering into the space industry. We've been strong in biotechnology. We innovate a lot in solar panel technology. But there is no reason for Australia to stick its neck out on 100% renewables, which has not been done anywhere in the world, when there is another solution staring us in the face, which is to use renewables and nuclear together to provide stable, firm, clean power to the grid, to millions of users.
Well, so Australia is hot and sunny. UAE is hot and sunny. Are there any lessons you'd like to talk about from UAE for Australia?
Well, Australia, as I said, it started its energy transition really well with wind and solar. That was the low-hanging fruit. Now we're having to build a lot of transmission lines and build a lot of large storage projects in order to smooth out the variability of wind and solar. A lesson that we could take from the UAE, perhaps, is that a nuclear power plant is perfect for that, and we can build one in the desert. There's not we're not constrained by the need to, build it anywhere. Nuclear engineers have been saying on some of the panels here today, it is completely possible to build a nuclear power plant just about anywhere, but not in Australia because it's banned.
Okay, so question. If UAE has the potential for a lot of solar power, do you have a sense of why they built a nuclear plant?
Yeah, well, I imagine it's because it provides that power that's always on. It was actually, I visited the Baraka power station and it was quite moving. So this is a 5 gigawatt, it will be a 5 gigawatt power plant when all of the 4 units are up and running, which is equivalent to all of the state of Victoria in Australia, all their dirty brown coal-fired power plants. It was quite moving to look over the Baraka power plant at sunset and see this plant that was going to provide power all night and every day for millions of people.
So you're saying that even in a country that has some of the highest solar potential in the world, you were able to sit there and look at one of the largest power plants in the world as the sun sank over the horizon, lights came on, knowing that that wouldn't cause some sudden jump in carbon emissions?
Yeah, absolutely, because, the way that we are... So when we are so heavily invested in building out these variable renewable sources, we need transmission to take the power from the best site. We have to build the wind and solar in the best site, the sunniest place, the windiest place. And we do need to build a lot of storage as well to store the power for overnight, and that's destructive to the environment. The Greens Party in Australia got started protesting the building of a hydroelectric dam because
The
of
storage, I
not,
guess
it was not pumped hydro.
Electricity
It was, yeah,
plus-
hydro dam. And so nuclear for Australia just solves all of these problems. It would provide us low carbon, low land use, stable electricity 24/7.
got it. If we can build it on time and on schedule.
Like Baraka.
Like Baraka. So you saw a nuclear plant built on time and on schedule, and you're hoping for that for your country?
Yeah, absolutely. And on the YIMBY-NIMBY point, yes, in my backyard, not in my backyard. Australia has a research reactor 50 kilometres from the centre of Sydney, the one of the two largest cities. I have to say that now because I think Melbourne's just overtaken Sydney in terms of population.
So research reactor, that means a little bitty thing that
A
doesn't
very
even...
small nuclear reactor that provides critical medical isotopes, so for nuclear medicine. So on average, most Australians are going to need some of these products during their lives, and it does some industrial work as well. It's probably the hardest working research reactor in the world. It's very impressive, very close to the city centre, and some people don't know it's there, and those that do, I think, are proud of it.
Well, let's have an electricity and heat research reactor in the same location to research how electricity works.
Yeah, we'll
for
just
the city of Sydney.
We'll just connect it to the grid to see how it works.
Okay, thank you very much to the panelists for these lovely opening statements. I know that we probably have people from some of the countries represented here. Just to remind anyone who's just walked by, we have USA in Chicago over there. We have Nigeria, Finland, Poland, Belgium, Australia. Anybody with tough questions for people from any of these countries, now's the time. If you want to hear more about any of the technologies they suggested for solving the various problems of clean city life, like air pollution or heating in the winter, or air conditioning, or electrified trains or cars, now's the time. Let's have it.
Thank you, and thank you. Excellent panel, I appreciate it very much. Finland. So how much of your power is nuclear versus renewables?
Of the electricity production, we have over 50%. It's like 51% on best days of nuclear, and the rest of it is basically renewables, because we have a very clean electricity production already. It's like 97% of.
You're planning to build more nuclear power plants, right? You just brought Olkiluoto to power. Are you looking to build more plants in Finland?
Yeah, so we had one other big plant being built, but it was a Russian plant, so we canceled that project for, again, obvious reasons. So we're hoping to find a solution to replace that power plant, because it was meant to power the steel industry. We're trying to decarbonize our industries as well, and it was supposed to produce electricity for the big steel factory up in north. So hopefully we can replace it, but in addition to that, we're mostly looking into the district heating with nuclear right now, because our we're going to need more clean electricity for transportation, electrifying transportation, doing synthetic fuels, producing hydrogen. So, and cleaning up our chemical industry, forestry. So we're going to need like maybe 10 big nuclear plants. To clean up all the industries and transportation of emissions. So I think we do need more big nuclear plants as well. But right now it's a very difficult situation with those. And the current government is really trying to encourage investors to think about new big nuclear plants as well, but there hasn't been any projects announced so far. So right now we're mainly talking about the district heating and nuclear plants.
When you say district heating, you pump steam into houses like through pipes. That's what district heating that you're talking about is, right?
Water, yeah.
Hot water,
yeah.
not steam.
Yeah. So and we, in addition to like burning stuff, we do have like huge heat pumps. Like in Helsinki city area, we have this huge heat pump that's using wastewater, and then it's like using that water to kind of heat apartments. So we do have other solutions, and we had a big geothermal project digging deep into the ground that didn't succeed. So that's why we're really looking into nuclear, and of course some waste heat from data centers, but none of these will get rid of all the burning that we're doing so far. So that's why we need nuclear, and the utilities have been very clear that we cannot get rid of burning unless we get nuclear for district heating.
Thank you.
So one thing we didn't talk about, we talked about district heating. There's also a concept of district cooling that you actually see in the UAE and in Chicago. So Chicago has the biggest district cooling system in America, where we literally like create ice overnight when electricity is cheap from our nuclear electricity, and then we pump that ice out into buildings during the daytime to power the air conditioning units. And it covers 53 million square feet of offices and condos downtown. And yeah, it's 115 buildings. I think it shaves the peak energy demand downtown by like 15 megawatts of electricity every day during the summer. So just adding it on, nuclear can do a lot.
So nuclear is very hot, and with the magic of thermodynamics and engineering, you can use it to do lots of cooling. That sounds like sorcery to me. I love it. Chicago, best city in the world. Emeric, you had something to add?
Yeah, I wanted to add about also clean cities, how in Belgium today, and this NIMBYism, or how did you call it?
Not in my backyard.
No, but the other one was?
YIMBYism.
YIMBYism, yes, in my backyard. So one of our big nuclear power plant, which is 2.9 gigawatts.
So about 3 million people's worth.
About 3 million people's worth of electricity, called Doel, is about 10 kilometers from the city of Antwerp, the second largest city in in Belgium, sorry. And it actually there isn't much of a NIMBYism in Antwerp. It's actually very well accepted within the city. Unfortunately, it doesn't provide district heating. Most of its heat is actually sent into cooling towers and then just rejected into the river from which it gets its cold source. And there is a project to use a bit of that heat now in a district heating project in the harbor of Antwerp, which is nearby the power plant. But today it doesn't really exist because there is a small district heating for industry around the harbor, which is powered by a gas power plant. And since nuclear was planned to be phased out, they never wanted to connect it to the nuclear plant. So there's definitely an opportunity there.
So you're describing district heating.
Yes.
Could make use of this heat,
yeah,
but it requires long-term planning.
Exactly.
And would you describe the energy strategy of Belgium as long-term planning?
No, that's the problem. Like within the country, it's not really planning long-term. And to come back on this thing of NIMBYism, well, in Antwerp, I said it's very well accepted that nuclear plant is there and that it provides clean power for the whole city, and then basically a quarter of Belgium, because that city is a city of less than 1 million inhabitants. And actually you have a city in Germany more than 100 kilometers away that actually is advocating against it. So they're doing the NIMBYism from more than 100 kilometers away, saying that, oh, it's dangerous for us, when it's actually close by, it is more accepted than when it's far away. So this is what nuclear does. One of the only sources of electricity or of power which has more acceptance if it's closer to people than if it's further. Nobody wants to be living downstream of a dam. Nobody wants wind turbine near their house. Nobody wants a coal plant near their house. Nobody wants a gas plant near their house. Nuclear plant, usually people are accepting it and embracing it.
So we've introduced some powerful terms here today that matter a lot in the young urbanist movement. We have talked about NIMBYism, not in my backyard. YIMBYism, yes, in my backyard. And I guess we're describing some issues with Germany here where it's NITBYism, not in their backyard, but over the border in another country. A little sketchy, if you ask me, especially when it's an attack on clean energy. Thank you so much for that, Andrea.
Yes, thanks. I just wanted to speak a little bit on the need for energy into the future. So in a changing climate, we are going to need more energy, not less. More energy to cool our homes as the temperature warms, more energy for heating as we have more cold snaps, more Desalinization, as we go through periods of water shortages. So we need a lot of power, and also the future is long. The future's really, really long. It doesn't end at 2050 where we might have goals to reach net zero by then. We have to provide clean power for all the rest of the future. So we need all of the clean energy sources that we have available, renewables and nuclear, because Australia still runs 50% on coal, and I don't think we have a hope of kicking it out without using all of the clean energy sources that we have available to us.
Thank you. Can we get another question from the audience?
For Nigeria, gentlemen, I'm sorry I've forgotten your name. Bit of a hard question, so think about it. Who's the customer for nuclear in a city like Lagos, or in a big developing nation? Nuclear traditionally can be really large, but maybe the grid and the ability to get the power to customers in the city might not be that strong yet. So are there industries there ready to be customers, or do cities like that need smaller nuclear for smaller portions that can tolerate a grid? Is that a challenge on the ground? I've just looked up and I can see that Nigeria is engaging with the IAEA on regulations. It's setting laws. I guess, what about infrastructure is the question, and who are the customers that can create that virtuous cycle of building and then having nuclear, paying for it, and then having more?
Yeah, just like I stated earlier, Lagos is the industrial hub. It's the largest industrial hub for the country. So there are bulk customers there for that. And then, like I said, the population is about 20 million. And the state is expanding rapidly. So you have bulk of customers there. The current energy source will not sustain it, which is gas. So it's not like we're asking them to phase it out. It's just like a kind of diverse, and then you can channel the nuclear aspect of it, of course, to the industries, because it has base loads. They work 24/7, and then the other aspect you channel it to the domestic aspects. Even if it trips and on and off, it's fine. But for the industries, they need base load.
Okay, so there's enough large customer base load there to
sure.
support that. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
One more question from the audience.
So you guys are talking about nuclear energy in cities, but there was no mention of keeping the nuclear waste on site. Do the people know about the nuclear waste? And like, what are the thoughts or actions that cities are taking to mitigate that?
The biologists are scrambling for the microphone.
Okay, so I wanted to give you an example, because in Poland we also have research power plant, actually not power plant, but reactor, and we have some waste because we're producing radioisotopes for almost the whole Europe to cure cancer and try to diagnose the cancer and different diseases. And we have storage for nuclear waste in one town. It's quite near the reactor, and the people in the town love the fact that they have storage there, because they have lower cost of life, because the storage pays for the water, for example. So they have lower cost. Also, they have 1 million złotych. It's our money, so it's around 250,000 of dollars, something like that, yearly. For things like events, like education, like, as I mentioned previously, water use. So they love this place, and it's unfortunately getting full. And they are like asking the government to make it bigger because they want to keep the waste still there. So it's perfect example how we can coexist with the nuclear waste, I think.
Come back.
Yeah, I think even though it's not direct, I think what happened when we were looking for site, the country proposed a site for the nuclear reactor, and then those guys were protesting. They don't like it. Now, when they were sat down, explained some of the benefits it comes with, like the good is explaining, education, schools, probably a university, and estates for the operators that will bring market and what have you. Now people are dragging it. Yeah, so the current site, they have agreed, and then another one, and then others want it to be sited there. So you see, if things are explained to people, because when you talk about waste, it's not as if the way people think about it. Like some people even think it's a large chunk of liquids that will be thrown all the way anyhow. No, I think in terms of waste, the nuclear industry is the most responsible industry because we take care of our waste. Unlike other industries, for example, the oil and gas, they just allow the CO2 into the air, even though they are trying to, I don't know how they will do it. But for us, we do it from the beginning to the end. And nowadays, we are thinking of ways of reprocessing them. So it's going to be a closed cycle from the beginning and round and round.
I'll try to have a very short answer. You talked about cities and nuclear waste. I want to maybe categorize a bit simply what was decided in Belgium. Let's say you have two kinds of waste. The short term, which is really waste, clothing, contaminated clothing, piping and so on. In Belgium we have a site already that is decided for this, that's being built, and how it's been done, and it's very accepted by the local population. Actually, I come from a town neighboring to this, and they've included associations from residents of the nearby towns to inform them and to also get them to participate. So it's citizen participation and debates and propositions that came from the citizens on what is important for them. And for example, in the design of the facility itself, there were some of the elements of the concern of the population which were included in the design of this. And so now this is actually very accepted. I wouldn't say it comes with enormous financial benefits because it's not just a thing to just bribe yourself into a place. However, what it does provide is long-term job prosperity because this repository is going to be built for the next 80 years because that's how it will take to fill the entire thing, and it will be backfilled. Well, you can check out the details in a Dessel Mall repository. And then for the spent fuel, which is we call it the more problematic waste or spiciest, it's actually, it's spent fuel, it's not waste, so you could use it in the future for other types of reactors. But also, if you really do want to bury it like they're doing it in Finland in Onkalo, we also have a site which has been designated and researched for the last 50 years in Belgium, but it's only a political problem that has not been decided because instead of being this a local matter, it is taken by federal. And then again, when you take this into people which is not in their backyard but in their backyard, as you said, then it becomes a problem because people from far away, they say, no, but it's really bad. So.
Okay, so sorry. You will all be able to send all your questions to Taya and have her expand on that. We have to end now. So I'll just say clean cities and nuclear, there's more than you might think. We started with Michael McLean from Chicago, 80% nuclear, not just the grid electricity, but also heating and cooling with nuclear. We had Abubakar Sadiq Aliyu from Nigeria, land of tens of millions of generator, where he's going to work with his colleague to propose centralized generation for each state on the grid, removing the need for millions of generators that currently pollute both in sound, local air, and CO2. We heard from Taya, who is from a land of very clean generation, a lot of it nuclear, who's working on the next frontier, which is bringing the nuclear reactors into the cities to provide the heat directly. We heard from Julia, who imagines big national parks, refuges for wildlife, big contiguous areas uninterrupted by energy infrastructure, including power lines, made up for by large nuclear plants, centralized, taking over the job of the coal plants, protecting the climate while sparing room for the wildlife. We heard from Emeric Massaut, the man who makes the trains run on time, who dreams of bringing the dirty truck traffic onto electrified rail and keeping the 50% of nuclear power in Belgium that is going to allow it to expand in the future. And finally, from Andrea Long, who believes in Australia that will have its innovation abilities best demonstrated by removing the ban on nuclear energy and bringing in nuclear on time and on budget. This was a spectacular panel. You should all get the card of every single one of these young people. I can't thank you enough for making it here to COP to spread this message, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all for the rest of week 2.